Welcome back to Kleppers Corner Today in History, the show where one date on the calendar wakes up, checks its notifications, and realizes it's responsible for assassinations, revolutions, pirates, CGI cowboys, and a boxer who could punch gravity into a new tax bracket. November 22nd is less a date and more a cosmic to-do list where humanity decided, let's cram 5 centuries of plot twists into 24 hours. It's a day of power transfers, global pivots, mystical farewells, and the rare moment when a pirate's head becomes a hood ornament. So strap in, hydrate, and consider wearing emotional seatbelts, because November 22nd hits harder than Mike Tyson in 1986. Segment 1, the crisis of the American presidency, 1963. If November 22nd had a trailer, this segment would be the part where the music goes minor, the narration gets dramatic, and the audience whispers, "Oh no, we know what's coming." The assassination of John F. Kennedy is one of those historical hinge moments where the entire country went from stylish optimism to existential panic in under a minute. Dallas at the time was known as the City of Hate, which is not the nickname you want when the president visits. That's like inviting the Pope to a city called Sin Hole. Nothing good ends up trending afterward. Kennedy's team needed Texas for re-election, so they decided, let's take the roof off the limo, absorb maximum sunlight, and, for reasons lost to time, apparently test fate. Then 12:30 p.m. struck. Shots rang out. The motorcade chaos began. America collectively froze. Markets panicked. News tickers spit out misinformation faster than X does today, and that's saying something. But the wildest part? The constitutional confusion. There was no 25th Amendment yet. That meant if something happened to LBJ immediately after, power could have gone to a 71-year-old speaker and then an 86-year-old Senate leader. America almost accidentally invented gerontocracy decades early. Instead, LBJ invoked the Tyler precedent, got sworn in on Air Force One beside Jacqueline Kennedy still in her blood-stained dress, and stabilized the government by sheer force of gravitas and side-eye. And from that moment, the Civil Rights Act pushed forward. The Great Society began, Vietnam escalated, and American politics were never the same. November 22nd didn't just change who led the country, it rewired the entire system that decides who leads the country. Segment 2, the Metaphysical Convergence, 1963. Now, here's where November 22nd goes full cosmic prank mode. Because while Kennedy's death consumed global attention, 2 other giants exited stage left, C.S. Lewis and Aldous Huxley. That's right, on the same day. A Christian apologist, a psychedelic mystic, and a president walk into history and none walk out. If you pitch that to Netflix, they greenlight it before you finish the sentence. C.S. Lewis, the Narnia guy, the Oxford intellectual who made Christianity sound like a worldview you could major in, died quietly in Oxford. Meanwhile, in Los Angeles, Aldous Huxley, the man who warned us about a world where pleasure replaces freedom, asked his wife to administer LSD so he could greet the afterlife in high definition. These men represented 3 conflicting visions of what humanity should believe: rational faith, spiritual transcendence, and the Kennedy-style faith in government and progress. This is why one philosopher later imagined the 3 of them meeting in purgatory for a celestial debate. Personally, I imagine Lewis showing up with footnotes, Huxley floating slightly above the ground, and Kennedy asking for a posthumous briefing. November 22nd, 1963 wasn't just a bad day. It was the day the 20th century's most influential worldviews all punched out from the time clock. Segment 3, the struggle for sovereignty in Lebanon, 1943 and 1989. November 22nd is Lebanon's Independence Day, its national birthday. Except Lebanon has the kind of birthdays where someone always throws a punch and someone else storms out. In 1943, the French arrested Lebanon's leaders and locked them in a medieval citadel, like they were grounding them for wanting independence. But the Lebanese people revolted, the French relented, and November 22nd became the official independence date. It was a rare moment of national unity in a country where unity is usually treated like an optional accessory. But then came 1989. Same date, same symbolism. Only this time, President Rene Mowad, who represented a flicker of hope for ending the Civil War, was assassinated by a car bomb big enough to make Hollywood jealous. Independence Day turned into a deadly reminder that Lebanon's sovereignty is always contested. Sometimes from inside, sometimes from outside, and sometimes from all directions, like a geopolitical octopus. November 22nd in Lebanon is both liberation and loss, hope and heartbreak, a national victory lap and a national warning label. On this date, Lebanon celebrates what it earned and mourns what it keeps losing. Segment 4. Tides of democracy in Europe and Eurasia. November 22nd is like Europe's annual reminder to update its software. This date has ushered in democratic transitions, political implosions, and the emergence of leaders who looked at history and said, "Fine, I'll fix it myself." Spain, 1975. Juan Carlos becomes king after Franco dies. Everyone assumes he'll keep fascism going because that's usually how heirs work. Instead, he goes, surprise, democracy, and speedruns Spain into the modern era. If plot twists had a patron saint, it would be Juan Carlos. UK, 1990. Margaret Thatcher resigns. The Iron Lady melts. The poll tax riots scorch her popularity. Her party tells her she's about as welcome as dial-up internet. And just like that, the queen of neoliberalism gets replaced by John Major, history's most medium-flavored prime minister. Ukraine, 2004. The Orange Revolution erupts after a rigged election. Citizens flood the streets in orange scarves and winter jackets. Because if you're going to protest electoral fraud, you might as well be on brand. The Supreme Court sides with the people, orders a new vote, and democracy gets one of its most colorful wins. Germany, 2005. Angela Merkel becomes chancellor. First woman, first East German, first scientist. If leadership were a chemistry experiment, she was the controlled variable that kept the whole EU from exploding. All of it. Same date, different years. November 22nd, acting like Europe's political reset button. Segment 5, the frontiers of discovery. November 22nd isn't just political drama, it's exploration season. Humanity uses this date to go somewhere new, open something old, or fly something enormous across the Pacific for reasons that probably made sense at the time. 1497, Vasco da Gama rounds the Cape of Good Hope and discovers the maritime route to India. This is the 15th century equivalent of discovering free Wi-Fi. It changes everything. It shifts global trade, fuels European empires, and opens the door to about 400 years of Europeans showing up everywhere and saying, "This is mine now." 1922, Howard Carter clears the rubble sealing the passage to King Tut's tomb. He's getting ready for the moment where he peeks inside and says he sees wonderful things, which is Egyptologist code for the world is about to lose its mind buying pharaoh-themed cocktail shakers. 1935, the China Clipper takes off for the first trans-Pacific airmail flight. Imagine trusting a giant metal flying boat to deliver your mail across thousands of miles of ocean. Today we panic if Amazon says arriving between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. These pilots crossed the Pacific using celestial navigation and vibes. On this date, humanity expanded its map. Down the coast of Africa, into ancient burial chambers, and over the hardest ocean on Earth. Segment 6, cultural shifts, music, animation, and boxing. November 22nd also reshapes culture, sometimes gently, sometimes with a punch you can hear from space. 1968, the Beatles release The White Album, a double LP recorded during the band's breakup in slow motion. It's basically 4 solo albums being forced to share a bedroom. Out of this chaos emerges genius. While My Guitar Gently Weeps, Blackbeard, Helter Skelter. It's messy, it's brilliant. It's the musical equivalent of a group project where everyone hates each other but still gets an A. 1995, Toy Story premieres and ends traditional animation overnight. It's the first fully CGI feature film, proving that computers can render emotion, complexity, and toys having existential breakdowns. Pixar launches, Disney pivots, every studio starts hiring programmers. The future arrives wearing a cowboy hat and saying, "You've got a friend in me." 1986, Mike Tyson becomes the youngest heavyweight champion in history at age 20. The fight lasts 2 rounds. Trevor Berbick tries to stand up afterward and fails in about 7 different directions. Tyson doesn't just win, he resets the gravitational rules of the ring. November 22nd gives us a cultural mixtape. Rock anthems, digital revolutions, and uppercuts strong enough to rearrange atoms. Segment 7, Blackbeard's Last Stand. Yes, time for piracy, swords, and headless aquatic cardio. On November 22nd, 1718, Blackbeard, the most flamboyant pirate in history, met his match off the Carolina coast. Royal Navy Lieutenant Robert Maynard lured him into boarding an empty ship filled with hidden soldiers. It was basically an 18th century version of clicking on a suspicious email. The battle was brutal. Eyewitnesses say Blackbeard took 5 bullets and over 20 sword cuts before he finally went down. Maynard then cut off his head and hung it from the bowsprit as proof of victory. Legend says Blackbeard's headless body swam 3 laps around the ship. Either that's ghost propaganda or this guy had world-class core strength. This was the death rattle of the golden age of piracy. After November 22nd, the seas get safer, shipping gets less dramatic, and nobody else tries to ignite their beard for intimidation. Segment 8, the Cairo Conference. Finally, we land in Cairo, November 22nd, 1943, where Roosevelt, Churchill, and Chiang Kai-shek sat down to redraw Asia like 3 dads deciding who gets which chores. Stalin refused to attend because he didn't want to antagonize Japan, and also because attending conferences he wasn't the center of was not his vibe. The Cairo Declaration laid out sweeping plans. Japan would lose its conquered islands, Taiwan would return to China, and Korea would become independent. These weren't just wartime talking points. They shaped the post-war world and left fingerprints on every future Taiwan Strait crisis. November 22nd, 1943 was Asia's redrafting session. Part diplomacy, part power move, part we'll definitely keep these promises, probably. In conclusion, November 22nd is not a date. It's a historical blender. Assassinations, independence, revolutions, exploration, music, movies, monarchs, chancellors, and pirates all share this square on the calendar like roommates who never learned boundaries. From Dallas to Kiev, from Cape Town to Cairo, from Tut's tomb to Toy Story's premiere, November 22nd is where the world repeatedly changes course. It reminds us that history doesn't move evenly or politely. It jumps, it snaps, it erupts. And sometimes, just to keep things interesting, it cuts off a pirate's head and invents modern animation on the same date. November 22nd is the story of humanity accelerating, imploding, reinventing, discovering, and occasionally punching its way into legend. And that is why history always saves its wildest stuff for days like this.